January 17, 1944. The pale winter sun cuts through the clouds over northern France, glinting off frost-covered fields. High above, the twin-engine P-38 Lightning slices through the thin air, its engines screaming like a predator hunting in silence. The pilot, a young Georgian, grips the control stick with practiced precision, eyes scanning the sky for the telltale silhouettes of enemy Messerschmitts. Every vibration, every hiss of the throttle speaks to him in a language he alone understands. Below, villages huddle in frozen quiet, unaware that the fate of the next hour could pivot on a single aerial duel. Suddenly, tracers arc through the sky. Luftwaffe fighters, sleek and deadly, converging with lethal intent. The pilot leans forward, feeling the engines hum beneath his fingers, a secret waiting to be unleashed. He knows the standard tactics won't save him. Only by bending the lightning in ways no one else has mastered can he survive. The first Messerschmitt crosses his path. A flick of the throttle, a subtle engine adjustment, and the chase begins. A dance of speed, steel, and nerve that will decide who claims the skies. By late 1943, the skies over Europe had become a battlefield in their own right. The Luftwaffe, once unchallenged, now faced the relentless pressure of Allied air power. British and American bombers penetrated deep into German-occupied territory, escorted by increasingly sophisticated fighter aircraft. The Allies were determined to establish air superiority, knowing that control of the skies could tip the balance on the ground. Among these fighters, the Lockheed P-38 Lightning stood apart. Its distinctive twin-boom design and central nacelle housed an array of powerful engines and weaponry, making it one of the most versatile aircraft in the Allied arsenal. Fast, heavily armed, and capable of long-range escort missions, the P-38 was a technological marvel. Yet its complexity demanded skill, precision, and an intimate understanding of its twin Allison engines, each capable of producing over 1,300 horsepower. Mistiming the throttles, or misjudging airflow, could spell disaster in the fragile theater of aerial combat. American pilots arriving from the United States faced a dual challenge, adapting to the harsh realities of European winter skies and confronting an enemy whose tactics had evolved over years of brutal conflict. German pilots, often seasoned from earlier campaigns, were adept at exploiting weaknesses, diving from high altitude with pinpoint accuracy or coordinating attacks in tight formations. Survival required more than courage. It demanded ingenuity and a willingness to push the aircraft beyond conventional limits. Into this high-stakes environment came a young pilot from Georgia. Fresh from flight school in the United States, he carried with him both the confidence of rigorous training and the naivety of someone untested in real combat. Assigned to a fighter group stationed in England, he learned quickly that theory and practice diverged sharply. The roar of engines during training exercises could not compare to the deafening chorus of flak, tracer fire, and the German Messerschmitts that challenged every maneuver. The P-38 itself was both ally and enigma. Its twin engines offered redundancy, but also complexity. Fuel management, throttle synchronization, and propeller pitch were all critical to extracting maximum performance. Pilots quickly discovered that the Lightning responded differently in various temperatures, altitudes, and combat conditions. On one bitter January morning, a routine escort mission turned into a harsh lesson in endurance. Icing on the wings, low visibility, and sudden bursts of enemy fire demanded instant decisions. Every pilot who survived such encounters carried both scars and insights that would later prove decisive. At the same time, Allied strategy emphasized aggressive reconnaissance and interception. Bombing raids deep into occupied Europe required fighter escorts capable of extended flight, often far from friendly airfields. P-38 pilots were expected to engage the Luftwaffe, protect bombers, and adapt mid-flight to unpredictable threats. There was no room for hesitation. A single miscalculation could cost not just the aircraft, but the lives of comrades hundreds of miles behind enemy lines. For our Georgian pilot, these conditions forged a blend of respect and fascination for his aircraft. The P-38's responsiveness, its raw power, and its limitations were all etched into his mind. He began to notice patterns, how the engines responded under sudden climbs, how torque affected turning radius, how subtle adjustments could offer advantages in pursuit or evasion. In these frozen skies, amid the roar of battle, the seeds of a unique strategy were planted, a technique that would later baffle enemy pilots and turn ordinary dogfights into extraordinary demonstrations of skill. This was a world in which ingenuity and mechanical understanding mattered as much as marksmanship. While the Luftwaffe relied on proven formations and aggressive tactics honed through years of experience, the P-38 offered a new frontier, a platform where human ingenuity could amplify technological potential. For those who mastered it, the skies were not merely a battlefield, but a canvas on which daring, creativity, and precision could dictate life or death. By the end of early 1944, the stage was set. European airspace was crowded with machines of war, each side vying for supremacy. For a single pilot from Georgia, surviving and thriving would demand not just courage, but an intimate knowledge of his P-38, a readiness to experiment, and a willingness to trust instincts honed in the icy winds over France. The coming months would see the emergence of a remarkable skill, a secret, that would elevate him above even the most experienced Luftwaffe opponents. By the spring of 1944, the young Georgian pilot had logged dozens of sorties over occupied Europe. Each mission brought a new lesson in survival, strategy, and adaptation. Flights that began as routine bomber escorts could quickly escalate into life-or-death encounters, with enemy fighters appearing like shadows in the bright sky. Even seasoned pilots acknowledged the unforgiving unpredictability of aerial combat. The slightest lapse could mean the difference between returning to base and never being seen again. One early mission over northern France vividly illustrated this reality. The pilot squadron was tasked with protecting a formation of B-17 bombers en route to a key industrial target. As they approached the flak-heavy zone, Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf W-90s descended from higher altitude with terrifying precision. The sky erupted with tracer fire, explosions, and the whine of engines under strain. The P-38s, with their twin engines and superior speed at high altitudes, had an advantage, but only if pilots knew how to exploit it. During these encounters, the Georgian pilot noticed subtle patterns in engine behavior that others often overlooked. The Lightning's Allison engines were powerful but sensitive. Small throttle adjustments, if timed correctly, could produce bursts of speed or sharper turns. Observing enemy maneuvers, he began experimenting mid-flight, pushing the aircraft into unconventional angles and leveraging engine asymmetry to evade pursuit. What initially seemed risky became a controlled advantage, giving him extra seconds to reposition or disengage from a seemingly inevitable attack. These experiments were not without danger. The P-38 required precise handling, and mistakes could induce torque roll, stall, or engine overheating. Yet with every successful maneuver, his confidence grew. He began integrating this understanding into his tactical thinking, not as a trick of luck, but as a calculated tool in high-stakes aerial chess. Fellow pilots noticed his daring, sometimes unorthodox, techniques, but few understood the mechanical intuition behind them. The pilot's missions also revealed the broader strategic context of the air war. Allied command placed immense pressure on fighter pilots to reduce bomber losses while maintaining offensive momentum. Every encounter with the Luftwaffe was not merely a duel. It was part of a larger effort to cripple German industry, disrupt supply lines, and prepare for the eventual Allied ground invasion. Understanding this, the Georgian pilot recognized that survival was inseparable from effectiveness. A maneuver that saved his plane also ensured the bomber formation remained intact, fulfilling the broader mission objective. By late spring, his growing proficiency had earned him a reputation among his squadron. Reports describe his ability to anticipate enemy tactics, exploit the P-38's unique performance, and execute escapes that seemed impossible to observers. It was during one particularly intense mission near the French coast that he first applied what would later become his signature engine technique in full combat. Pinned by multiple enemy fighters, he manipulated engine output in a coordinated sequence that allowed him to outmaneuver 3 pursuing Bf-109s. The Luftwaffe pilots were left stunned, unable to predict the lightning's sudden bursts of acceleration and unorthodox turns. These early successes highlighted a key truth. The combination of human ingenuity and technological mastery could redefine what was possible in aerial warfare. While other pilots relied on standard doctrine, the Georgian pilot's approach demonstrated that intimate understanding of aircraft mechanics, coupled with split-second decision-making, could turn the tide in even the most dangerous engagements. By the summer of 1944, this knowledge had been tested repeatedly. Each mission reinforced the pilot's understanding of engine dynamics, airflow, and throttle response. The techniques that began as cautious experimentation now formed the foundation of a daring and highly effective combat style. It was this approach that would soon allow him to confront the Luftwaffe in a way few pilots could, and to survive encounters that would have been fatal for others. With the foundation laid, combat experience, mechanical mastery, and situational awareness. In the cockpit of a P-38, the young Georgian pilot faced not just machines, but the raw extremes of human emotion. Fear was a constant companion, sharp, immediate, and unrelenting. But it never became paralysis. Instead, it honed his instincts. He learned to read the subtle shifts of the aircraft beneath him, the vibrations in the throttle, the faint changes in engine pitch, the way the twin booms flexed under stress. Each flight demanded mental and physical synchronization. Every maneuver was a dialogue between mind and machine. The human element was further tested by fatigue, isolation, and the ever-present knowledge that death could arrive silently from above or below. Long missions over enemy territory blurred the distinction between courage and desperation. Letters home revealed glimpses of the pilot's inner life, determination to protect his squadron, pride in his machine, and a quiet fascination with the P-38's capabilities. He was acutely aware that survival was never guaranteed, yet the combination of skill, intuition, and adaptability gave him a sense of control in an environment designed to strip it away. Tactically, the Georgian pilot's approach was revolutionary for its time. Standard dogfight doctrine emphasized formation, flying, mutual support, and predictable patterns designed to counter German fighters' known strategies. Yet, he discovered that the P-38 offered possibilities beyond conventional doctrine. By exploiting engine asymmetry, throttle bursts, and rapid climbs or dives, he could alter his flight path in ways the Luftwaffe could not anticipate. One illustrative example occurred during a mission escorting bombers over northern France. Pinned by enemy fighters in a classic bounce attack from above, he initiated a series of controlled, high-throttle maneuvers that allowed him to reverse the engagement. Where most pilots would have sought to flee or rely on squadron support, he used the P-38's twin engines to create an unexpected burst of acceleration, shifting his trajectory in a way that disrupted enemy calculations. This tactic was not widely taught, yet its effectiveness spoke for itself, turning the pilot into an unpredictable adversary. Tactical mastery also involved situational awareness, timing attacks with altitude advantage, reading enemy formation shifts, and integrating knowledge of the P-38's capabilities into real-time decision-making. It was a high-wire balance of precision, instinct, and courage. The P-38 Lightning itself was a marvel of engineering, but it demanded respect. Its twin Allison V417-2N engines provided extraordinary power, yet required delicate handling. The pilot quickly learned that minor adjustments to engine throttle could yield dramatic differences in speed, climb rate, and turning radius. More than raw horsepower, the aircraft responded to nuanced pilot input, creating opportunities for creative maneuvers that few Luftwaffe pilots could counter. The secret engine trick stemmed from this intimate knowledge. By manipulating the throttles independently, the pilot could achieve bursts of acceleration or subtle yaw adjustments that were invisible to onlookers but devastating in combat. Combined with the Lightning's lightweight structure and aerodynamic design, these techniques allowed him to turn tight corners, escape from superior numbers, or gain a decisive positional advantage. Beyond engines, the P-38's armament, 450 caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon centralized in the nose, provided both precision and lethality. The pilot's understanding of this technological synergy between flight dynamics and firepower amplified his effectiveness. He was not just flying the aircraft, he was orchestrating its potential in real time, a blend of human intellect and mechanical precision rarely seen in the chaos of aerial warfare. From the perspective of commanding officers, the Georgian pilot represented both a challenge and an opportunity. His unconventional maneuvers defied standard formation doctrine. Yet the results were undeniable. Bomber formations remained protected, Luftwaffe fighters were neutralized, and casualties minimized. Squadron leaders recognized that such ingenuity, when properly guided, could amplify the effectiveness of an entire unit. Reports from mission debriefs reveal a tension between caution and admiration. Some officers worried that pushing the single pilot's instincts too far could endanger the squadron. Others acknowledged that his approach exemplified initiative, the very quality the Allies hoped to cultivate in their fighter groups. By blending discipline with creativity, he became an informal model for adaptive aerial tactics, inspiring younger pilots to explore the limits of their aircraft without courting unnecessary risk. The leadership angle also highlights trust. Commanders had to balance operational necessity with confidence in the pilot's judgment. By mid-1944, his reputation for consistent success granted him a degree of autonomy, rare for a relatively young pilot. That trust was not given lightly. It was earned through meticulous skill, a deep understanding of both his aircraft and the enemy, and a record of mission success that spoke louder than any manual or regulation. For the Luftwaffe, the Georgian pilot became a subtle but persistent problem. Experienced Bf-109 and WW-190 pilots trained in years of European combat, struggled to anticipate his unconventional maneuvers. Reports from German pilots note the lightning's sudden bursts of speed, tight turns, and seemingly impossible reversals. What should have been predictable dogfight dynamics became chaotic and disorienting, disrupting formation coordination and exposing weaknesses. Luftwaffe pilots who had faced hundreds of Allied aircraft began to perceive the P-38 Lightning as not merely a tool, but a variable. Its pilot capable of altering engagement rules with instinctive, almost surgical precision. For the enemy, the presence of such a skilled adversary introduced caution into previously confident attacks, slowing decision-making and, in many cases, preventing them from capitalizing on numerical superiority. By consistently exploiting this edge, the Georgian pilot forced the Luftwaffe to adapt. They experimented with new intercept patterns, revised formation approaches, and increased reliance on coordinated team tactics to counter a single unpredictable opponent. Yet, in doing so, they confirmed the effectiveness of his method. Skill and innovation could disrupt even the most disciplined adversary. Beyond the human drama and technical mastery, there were broader moral and strategic dimensions. Each maneuver, each aerial engagement, carried stakes far higher than personal survival. Protecting bombers meant safeguarding the crews inside, whose missions aimed to cripple German production, infrastructure, and logistics. A single pilot's ingenuity, therefore, could amplify strategic outcomes, preserving lives and resources while undermining the enemy's capacity. Ethically, these maneuvers reflected the tension inherent in aerial warfare. Unlike infantry combat, dogfights allowed individual skill to directly determine outcomes. The Georgian pilot's engine trick was not about recklessness. It was an application of knowledge to preserve life, both his own and that of the men he was charged to protect. The moral calculus of innovation in combat emerges clearly. Mastery of technology could be used to enhance survival and mission success without compromising broader principles of duty and responsibility. Strategically, the impact extended beyond isolated skirmishes. By demonstrating the potential of high-skill, mechanically informed maneuvers, the pilot influenced Allied tactical thinking. Other squadrons began experimenting with similar techniques, integrating engine management and aerodynamic exploitation into dogfight doctrine. The broader effect was a subtle shift in air combat philosophy. Technical mastery combined with human ingenuity became a force multiplier in the European theater. June 10, 1944. The skies over northern France were heavy with anticipation and smoke, the remnants of earlier bombing raids drifting like ghosts over the patchwork of fields and forests below. Allied bombers, carrying vital strikes against German supply lines, were moving steadily toward their target. Escorting them, a squadron of P-38 Lightnings cut through the gray sky, their engines droning in low hums of controlled power. Among them, the Georgian pilot prepared for a confrontation that would test every lesson learned over the past months. A flight of Luftwaffe Bf-10-9s dove from higher altitude, sun glinting off their noses. Tracer fire tore through the air as the P-38s responded, forming defensive patterns. Yet within moments, it became clear that this was no ordinary skirmish. The German pilots were experienced, coordinated, and ruthless. Each maneuver was designed to exploit standard Allied tactics, to funnel the P-38s into predictable patterns and isolate them from the bombers they were sworn to protect. The Georgian pilot reacted instinctively. Where others might have followed the standard evasive protocol, he engaged a precise sequence of engine manipulations. Adjusting the throttles independently, he created a sudden asymmetric thrust that gave him a burst of acceleration to the left, immediately followed by a rapid climb. The maneuver was subtle to observers, but devastating in its effect. Enemy pilots attempting to follow found themselves misaligned, overshooting positions or colliding with the blind spots created by his sudden motion. A Messerschmitt closed in, its guns spitting fire. The pilot leaned into the Lightning's controls, feeling the twin engines respond to minute adjustments. A brief hesitation, a controlled roll, and then a surge forward. He broke the line of fire and simultaneously positioned himself behind a pursuing FW-190. With the P-38's concentrated nose armament, he delivered a calculated burst that forced the enemy to disengage. Seconds later, another fighter approached, only to be outmaneuvered by the same technique. A combination of asymmetric thrust, subtle yaw, and timing that leveraged every aspect of the aircraft's design. These engagements continued for over 10 minutes, a continuous series of cat-and-mouse maneuvers across the cold winter sky. Each burst of speed or slight adjustment was a gamble, executed with a confidence born of countless sorties. In the space of minutes, what seemed like overwhelming odds became a canvas for ingenuity, with the Georgian pilot turning the P-38 into a weapon both of precision and surprise. Mission reports later described the engagement as exceptional. Multiple enemy aircraft had been forced to disengage, bomber formations remained largely intact, and no Allied planes were lost to enemy fire during this critical window. Witnesses noted the almost unnatural fluidity of the Georgian pilot's maneuvers, a combination of instinct, courage, and intimate mechanical understanding. The Luftwaffe pilots, trained to expect certain patterns and responses, were repeatedly confounded, unable to anticipate the sudden shifts in trajectory or bursts of acceleration that seemed to defy conventional physics. Yet the intensity of the battle was not just mechanical or tactical. It was deeply human. The roar of engines, the staccato rhythm of machine gun fire, and the constant threat of enemy attacks created a crucible of stress and endurance. Each maneuver required not only technical mastery, but unwavering mental clarity. Fatigue, cold, and the adrenaline of combat pressed against him. Yet he remained composed, executing each sequence with surgical precision. By the end of this encounter, the Georgian pilot had achieved something remarkable. Against superior numbers, he had neutralized threats, preserved the bomber formation, and demonstrated a level of aerial ingenuity that would echo through squadron reports and enemy accounts alike. The secret engine trick, once an experimental technique in training sorties, had become a decisive factor in survival and mission success. Just days after the first encounter, the Georgian pilot faced an even more perilous challenge. On June 14, 1944, intelligence reported a concentrated Luftwaffe sortie aiming to intercept Allied bomber formations targeting critical German supply depots. Over the Normandy skies, clouds hung low, the wind biting through the open cockpit vents. The P-38 squadron, tasked with protecting the bombers, climbed to meet the threat, engines straining as they gained altitude. As the German fighters approached, the scale of the engagement became clear. Over a dozen Bf-29s and few 190s were converging in multiple vectors, intending to overwhelm the escorts. Standard defensive formations were insufficient. The sheer number of enemy aircraft required both precision and improvisation. The Georgian pilot, now experienced in reading the flow of combat, prepared to implement his full repertoire of maneuvers. The engagement began with a dive from 15,000 feet. Enemy fighters attacked from above, expecting the P-38s to follow predictable defensive roles. Instead, the Georgian pilot executed a series of asymmetric throttle adjustments combined with subtle engine overboosts, propelling him into a sudden vertical climb that sent pursuing aircraft past him. He rotated the twin engines individually, using the differential thrust to alter trajectory mid-ascent, a maneuver so precise that the Luftwaffe pilots miscalculated intercept points, forcing their formation to split in disarray. One particularly tense moment occurred when a Bf-109 lined up for a direct pass. Anticipating the trajectory, the pilot initiated a coordinated engine burst paired with a banked roll, effectively sliding past the enemy at an unexpected angle. The German pilot fired, but rounds passed harmlessly as the P-38's nose twisted in perfect alignment, delivering a counterstrike with the nose-mounted cannon. The enemy aircraft, damaged and confused, disengaged in retreat, leaving the Georgian pilot momentarily alone in open sky, a testament to both daring and mechanical mastery. This pattern repeated across multiple skirmishes that morning. Each enemy approach tested the limits of endurance, both human and mechanical. The pilot monitored engine temperature, fuel consumption, and structural stress while calculating split-second responses to enemy movements. Every burst of acceleration or sudden maneuver risked overloading the engines, yet precise throttle management and deep familiarity with the aircraft allowed him to maintain optimal performance. By the end of the day, the results were extraordinary. Allied bombers reached their targets with minimal losses. Several Luftwaffe fighters were confirmed, destroyed, or damaged, and squadron reports highlighted the Georgian pilot's role in turning what could have been a catastrophic engagement into a resounding tactical success. Witness statements described a single P-38 behaving as if it had multiple pilots, a reflection of the near-perfect integration of human skill and machine responsiveness. Strategically, these events had immediate impact. The Luftwaffe, already strained by Allied air superiority, now faced pilots who could unpredictably exploit aircraft mechanics to create decisive advantages. The Georgian pilot's engine trick was not a fleeting anecdote. It represented a practical evolution in dogfight tactics, demonstrating that mastery of technology could allow one skilled individual to influence the outcome of a major air operation. Yet the climax was not without cost. Extended engagement under extreme conditions tested both pilot and aircraft. Fatigue and the psychological weight of repeated life-or-death decisions pressed relentlessly. Each maneuver, each calculation, was a gamble misstep, meant destruction. The fact that the Georgian pilot survived, intact and operational, underscored the precision, discipline, and courage required. By nightfall, as the squadron returned to base, the significance of the day became clear. What began as a routine mission had transformed into a showcase of aerial ingenuity and human resilience. Reports circulated throughout Allied command, praising the pilot's performance. Recommendations for wider training in engine manipulation techniques began to emerge, inspired directly by his successes. The secret engine trick, once an experimental tactic in isolated sorties, had proven its worth under the most intense conditions imaginable. The morning after the intense aerial engagements, the airfields buzzed with activity. Ground crews inspected returning P-38s, checking engines, wings, and armaments for the damage sustained in combat. Among them, the Georgian pilot's aircraft bore the subtle marks of dogfighting, the faint scorch of tracer fire, minor paint scratches from debris, but remained fully operational. The pilots themselves were weary, their faces drawn with exhaustion, yet there was a palpable sense of accomplishment in the squadron. Mission debriefings that afternoon painted a vivid picture of the events. Allied intelligence noted the unusual tactics employed by the Georgian pilot: rapid asymmetric engine adjustments, precise throttle bursts, and unpredictable flight paths that allowed him to neutralize multiple enemy fighters while preserving bomber formations. Commanding officers praised both his ingenuity and his discipline. In official reports, he was cited as an exemplar of initiative under fire, a phrase used sparingly in the high-pressure environment of air combat documentation. The tactical success was quantifiable. Over the course of the engagement, the squadron had forced at least 5 confirmed Luftwaffe fighters to retreat or crash, while the bombers reached their targets with minimal damage. Losses, typically expected during deep penetration sorties, were dramatically reduced, and mission objectives were met with exceptional efficiency. These results drew the attention of higher command, prompting inquiries into how such maneuvers could be standardized without compromising safety. For the Luftwaffe, the consequences were immediate. Fighter pilots returning to occupied airfields reported encountering an opponent who defied conventional engagement patterns. German intelligence noted the precision and unpredictability of the P-38 maneuvers, highlighting the pilot's ability to exploit the aircraft's twin-engine design. Strategists began adjusting intercept protocols, emphasizing coordinated attacks over reliance on individual skill. The Georgian pilot's actions, though the work of a single individual, forced a recalibration of enemy tactics, illustrating how one pilot's ingenuity could ripple outward, affecting entire operations. Within the squadron, camaraderie and respect grew. Fellow pilots observed the tactical advantages firsthand and began to experiment with similar engine management techniques in training sorties. While few could match his precision in live combat, the example set a precedent for adaptive thinking. Mechanical mastery and split-second decision-making could become decisive factors in aerial engagements. In this way, the aftermath of the battle extended beyond the immediate mission, influencing squadron doctrine and shaping the mindset of Allied pilots preparing for future sorties. Awards and recognition followed. Though the Georgian pilot was modest about his achievements, official commendations acknowledged both skill and bravery. Unit citations highlighted his role in protecting bomber formations and disrupting enemy operations, while personal commendations noted his innovative approach to piloting the P-38 under extreme conditions. His reputation, already notable within his squadron, began to extend to higher command, further cementing the significance of his contributions to the European air war. The broader implications were equally profound. Beyond the immediate tactical victories, the engagements demonstrated that human ingenuity could enhance technological advantage in ways that manuals and doctrine alone could not anticipate. A single pilot, mastering the mechanics of a complex aircraft, could alter the calculus of a battle, forcing the enemy to adapt and rethink long-standing strategies. This lesson resonated beyond individual missions, influencing training programs, tactical planning, and the psychological understanding of air combat on both sides of the conflict. As the summer of 1944 progressed, the ripple effects of the Georgian pilot's actions became increasingly evident. Allied air commanders noted a subtle but significant shift in aerial tactics. The success of his engine trick demonstrated that mastery over an aircraft's mechanics could transform standard dogfight procedures, allowing small groups, or even individual pilots, to influence engagements far beyond their numbers. Squadron training began incorporating lessons drawn from his experiences, emphasizing engine management, asymmetric thrust, and adaptive maneuvering under pressure. The Luftwaffe, on the other hand, found itself forced into a reactive posture. German pilots had long relied on experience, discipline, and strict adherence to formation strategies to dominate the skies. Encounters with pilots like the Georgian highlighted the limitations of these approaches when faced with unpredictable, mechanically informed maneuvers. Intelligence reports circulated, warning of unexpected performance characteristics and the need for coordinated interception to counter the P-38 Lightning. In essence, a single pilot's ingenuity imposed operational changes on a major air force already stretched thin by attrition and Allied bombing campaigns. Within his own squadron, the pilot's influence was equally pronounced. Younger and less experienced pilots began experimenting under controlled conditions, learning to feel the engines, anticipate aircraft responses, and exploit the P-38's unique capabilities. This culture of innovation, rooted in observation, disciplined risk-taking, and technical understanding, became part of the unit's identity. Commanders recognized that encouraging calculated experimentation could yield disproportionate strategic benefits, and the Georgian pilot's example became a touchstone for this philosophy. Allied crews gained confidence, knowing that skillful pilots could protect bomber formations even under overwhelming odds. For the Luftwaffe, the unpredictability of these maneuvers introduced caution, hesitation, and increased risk aversion. Engagements that might previously have been approached with aggressive certainty now required reassessment, reducing the efficiency of German attacks and subtly shifting the momentum of air operations over the European theater. The Georgian pilots' contributions also underscored the evolving relationship between human skill and technology in warfare. While aircraft design provided raw capabilities, it was human ingenuity that unlocked their full potential. His success illustrated a fundamental truth of air combat. Advanced technology alone could not guarantee victory. Precision, creativity, and a deep understanding of one's machine could amplify tactical impact far beyond conventional expectations. This lesson resonated beyond his squadron, influencing training programs and doctrine across multiple Allied fighter groups. By the end of 1944, the combined effects were clear. Allied missions experienced increased efficiency, Luftwaffe losses grew, and tactical thinking evolved. The engine trick, once a personal innovation, had entered the collective consciousness of air operations. It demonstrated that mastery of technology, when paired with courage and foresight, could yield results disproportionate to the resources expended. Individual initiative, previously seen as supplementary, now had the potential to redefine engagements on a strategic scale. The P-38 Lightning, with its twin engines and distinctive silhouette, was more than a machine. It was an extension of the pilot's mind and instincts. Through careful study, intuition, and daring experimentation, he transformed what others saw as limitations into instruments of advantage. Each asymmetric throttle adjustment, each nuanced maneuver, became a language in itself, a dialogue between man and machine that could confound even the most experienced enemy. Yet the story is not merely about technical skill or battlefield heroics. It is about courage under pressure, the willingness to innovate when standard doctrine fails, and the quiet determination to protect others in the midst of danger. In every engagement, there was risk, but also purpose. Survival was intertwined with responsibility, and ingenuity was inseparable from duty. Historically, his actions illuminate a broader lesson. Technology in war is never neutral. Its impact is magnified or diminished by the people who wield it. The Georgian pilot's engine trick altered the calculus of aerial combat, influenced squadron tactics, and forced the enemy to adapt. It serves as a reminder that human skill, when applied with creativity and precision, can tip the balance in ways that raw numbers or firepower alone cannot. As winter skies give way to spring, as aircraft return to base, and crews take stock of missions won and lost, the echoes of ingenuity remain. The P-38's engines may cool, and the dogfights may end, but the legacy endures, a testament to the enduring power of human intelligence, courage, and the unyielding pursuit of mastery over both machine and circumstance. In the dance of war, it is these qualities that carve their mark most indelibly upon history. From the first roar of engines over northern France to the quiet reflection in the hangars, the story of one Georgian pilot reminds us that even amidst the vast machinery of war, individual skill can shape the course of events, leaving a legacy far greater than a single mission.